Is Iran overplaying their cards with their demands from the US to open the Strait of Hormuz? Here are the demands. Iran's Supreme National Security Council chief, Mohsen Rezai, who's the new secretary, says Iran rules out reopening the Strait of Hormuz until Trump administration meets all its conditions, meaning 300 billion in compensation for the damages through this war, the release of up to $100 billion in frozen assets. These are Iranian money that the US has frozen, that Iran wants it back, lifting all sanctions, US troop withdrawal from the entire region, an end to the naval blockade, accepting transit fees on every ship that passes through Hormuz, and now a region-wide ceasefire, including in Lebanon and Gaza. Guys, these are not new demands. This is the same demands as part of the MOU. Now, as part of the MOU, they said that, hey, we're going to, while we're negotiating to the end of the war, we're going to do, we have these conditions that will happen throughout the war, throughout the negotiation. But given that the US has broken the MOU, the fifth point, which says that Iran is going to arrange for the free passage of ships through Hormuz throughout the 30 days, and then the US went and did the southern corridor that's against the, to remove Iran's leverage of controlling the Hormuz, to put pressure on the US. That broke the MOU. But given that the Americans broke the MOU, well, Iran's now saying, hey, we don't trust anything from you. So we want everything up front. None of this, will do this in 30 days or in 60 days. And because otherwise, why would Trump really give any concessions to Iran if Iran doesn't have any kind of leverage over the US, which is why Iran wants to control Hormuz? It's nothing to do with making a long-term recurring revenue from the transit fees on the Strait of Hormuz. The reality is that they want to use that to put pressure on the US to get rewards right now. Not in 30 days, not in 60 days, not in next year. And why do they feel like they can do that right now? It's because they have maximum leverage. This is the whole point of Iran's not really overplaying their cards. They're just playing their cards. And they are very good cards. When you win the war, you dictate the terms. Now, how would you consider whether Iran or the US won the war? Well, it's the US who started the war by attacking Iran during negotiations. And obviously, they had objectives during that war. Yes, they killed their leadership, but they don't kill leadership just for the sake of killing people. They kill them to achieve an outcome. Now, what was the objectives that they stated at the beginning? Well, it was regime change. If you remember, Trump was saying to the Iranians, rise up, take over, and we're going to help you, is to degrade Iran's missile capability. Well, 5 months after the war, they're still targeting U.S. assets and killing U.S. soldiers, as we saw in Jordan and Iraq. And they wanted Iran to give up its nuclear enrichment. Well, they're never going to do that now. They were intending to do it as part of a negotiation, but that was before you killed their people and their leadership and you started a war. Obviously, the situation is very different now, and they're not going to give any concessions up front, because they've tried to do that. They did that with the JCPOA, where they gave so much in return for very little. And then in the end, Trump came in and ripped that nuclear agreement apart just after a few years. So if the US didn't achieve its objective, and then on top of it, Iran now controls the Strait of Hormuz, which it didn't before. On top of it, Iran was isolated before the war, and now everyone wants to engage with Iran to ensure that their ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran was seen as a weak nation that you could bully, as the US did with killing Soleimani, killing leadership, and Iran not retaliating. And now what we have is an emboldened Iran that is not even waiting for the US to attack it. It's attacking US assets whenever it sees that there's a threat to its people and its nation. This is a very different leadership, a very different Iran. And it's making its demand up front, and it's being very clear. There's this whole idea that this strategy by Trump to say, in private, they're begging us for a deal, and in public, they're saying we're not talking to the Americans. Well, if they're begging you for a deal, then you would have got into a deal, 5 months ago when you said they were begging you for a deal. We're going to be 6 months in this war at the end of this month, and there is no deal. We're not even close to a deal. In fact, the demands by Iran are becoming harder for the U.S. to accept. Before they wanted to basically open the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians were okay with opening the Strait of Hormuz just for the U.S. removing their naval blockade, and then the other points of the MOU will, be accepted or processed throughout the negotiation. now. And it's funny, every time that the US attacks Iran, their demands increase. It's doing the opposite effect. It's not weakening Iran, it's making them stronger. Now, why does Iran feel like it has all the leverage? Well, because the US ammunitions are extremely low. We've shown this many times in previous episodes, whereby, the interceptors, the defense interceptors by the US, the THAAD are 80% depleted. The Patriot missiles are 50% depleted in a matter of just a few months of this war. Their land-to-land missiles, this is the missiles, the ATACMS launchers that shoot either HIMARS or the PRSM missiles from Kuwait to Iran, so land-to-land, which are attack missiles, they're not defense missiles. They're 90% depleted. I mean, they had only 90 of them before the war, which is hilarious. So the US doesn't have the ammunition. And it's not like the US, it only takes the US about 4 years to 5 years to replenish all the interceptor missiles that they've used. Only 4 to 5 years, That's if they have the rare earth minerals required to produce those weapons, which, surprise, surprise, China has an export control on some of those rare earth minerals because it knows that the US needs it. And, why would you give your enemy those chemicals or the minerals that are required to create weapons to be used on you in the future, possibly, and your allies right now? And on top of it, the reason why oil is not in triple digits is because the US is releasing oil from its strategic reserve, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This is the inventory that the US holds, which it releases during supply shocks to ensure that prices are lower and there's no oil shortages. Well, where are we with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? This is from the US Energy Information Administration. And you can see over here, this is stocks of crude oil in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And these are it says 250,000, but these are 1,000 barrels, so this is 250 million. And in 1982, they started filling this up. And at its height, in 2011, it reached 726.5 million barrels and slowly started to deplete. And then there was a big crash over here during 2022 because of the Russia-Ukraine war. There was a stop, Russia stopped, well, they put sanctions on Russia, so they couldn't export oil. So they had to use their strategic reserve to ensure there isn't a supply shock of oil. And then they started to increase it. It dropped all the way to 350 million barrels in 2023. Then they started to increase it to 415 million barrels in 2026 before the war. And then it dropped to now 304 million barrels in the week of 31st of July. Well, we actually have the data afterwards, which is the latest data is now 298 million barrels is what is left in the crude oil in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. 298 million. The last time the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was 298 million was all the way in 1983. 1983, since they started filling it up. So they've never used that much of oil since they've started to fill it up. And so this is a temporary buffer. Now, the funny thing is that you can't use all the oil in this Strategic Petroleum Reserve. One, because you need oil in the system to make it operational. But also when you really reduce the oil in these tankers, the storage tankers, the walls, which are apparently salt walls, cave in if you go below a minimum. And so you can't deplete the whole thing without destroying this whole infrastructure. Now, the US government has mandated that we never go below 250 million. Now we're going to find out whether, they're going to go below that. But essentially what we're talking about, because right now the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is being used about 7 million barrels a week, about 6 to 7 million barrels a week. So in 8 weeks, we're looking at around 50 million barrels being used, which would take us below that 250 million, which is mandated not to go below by the US government. That is in 8 weeks. So in 8 weeks, we're likely to see extreme high prices and possibly oil shortages in the US just before the midterm elections, which is in November. And you can see also over here the US Big Four storage. So this is not just crude, which was what we were showing before, but gasoline, distillate, and jet fuel, which is actually the end products that you make from crude oil. We don't use crude oil in our cars. We use, whether it's gasoline or airplanes use jet fuel. So you can see, and the yellow is 2026, and these other ones are in different years. We're the lowest we've been in the last 5 years. And we're like, look at this downfall over here. I mean, in 2022, which is when the war happened between Russia and Ukraine, we had a big downfall, but we started much, much higher in the storage. So it wasn't a big problem. But we're here much lower, and we're going much steeper down. The funny thing is what Trump is doing, this isn't, all of these products aren't just used in the US. What he's doing is he's using up this, releasing it from the storage to export it and make money from the shortages that the world has because of the disruption from the Strait of Hormuz being closed. Well, not him, but for the government. So he's trying to manage the supply shock impact in other countries at the expense of the US. And that is going to, hit him back real hard in a couple of weeks when this is going to be depleted. This is the Wall Street Journal. Trump thought opening the Strait of Hormuz was imminent. Iran had other plans. So Trump, apparently, for weeks, President Trump has been laying the groundwork to declare victory in the Iran war should Tehran fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Even floating the idea privately to senior aides that he's willing to walk away without a nuclear deal. And that's how bad the situation is, because he knows if this continues, there's going to be economic recession at least, if not a depression, because of the high oil prices are going to hit the economy once they use up all the strategic petroleum buffer that they're using right now. But the scale-back objective became more difficult when Iran insisted Saturday on its highest price yet for permitting the free flow of traffic in the waterway, which is seeking the billions of dollars in U.S. payments, the removal of American troops from the region, and an end of the U.S. naval blockade, among other things. The problem you have over here is because not only is Hormuz disrupted, but Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea is disrupted by Ansar Allah. Once Saudi Arabia attacked Sana'a, which amazing idea, guys, to attack the Sana'a airport when Hormuz is closed for Saudi Arabia. So, Saudi Arabia's only other route to export its oil is from the west side, which is the Red Sea, from Yanbu over here. So what you're seeing over here, so this was before the war. The yellow is from the Gulf. The black is from Yanbu, which is the west side. The Gulf as in Hormuz from the east side. And once the war kicked off, this is February or March, you can see Yanbu being used a lot more. And this was before, this one over here is before the Ansar Allah retaliated against Saudi Arabia when they hit their airport. And they now are disrupting the Bab el-Mandeb, the Red Sea. Look at how big this is. This is around, most of it was coming from the Yanbu, only a bit from the Strait of Hormuz. But now, the Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz is being used more, which means the Saudis are now having to interact with the Iranians so that their ships pass through the allowed path in the Strait of Hormuz, unless they're using the southern corridor, which Americans say is safe, but every day there's a ship being hit by the Iranians because they're saying that route is not allowed to be used. It's only that other route that we control, essentially. And so we're going to see this amount that's coming from Yanbu being reduced more and more and more. And really, Ansar Allah started to kick things off in August. And so we haven't seen the decline, but we've already started to see it because it was the end of July that the disruption started to happen. And we can already see that dip happen with more coming from the Gulf to compensate for that. But, so Saudi Arabia was exporting about 7 million barrels before the war. Now they're exporting 4 million. So there's a loss of 3 million. But that is going to continue to decrease because of the disruption that's being caused by Ansar Allah, which we're going to see the data in August of that disruption. So that could easily go down to 3 million. And some days will be, 2 million barrels a day being exported only. So Trump is out of ammunition. He's using up the oil strategic reserve, and that's going to be depleted very soon. So oil prices are going to go up in a couple of weeks. Equipment is breaking down because of the heat and how long they've been in theater carrying out those attacks. Iran has pushed the U.S. assets all the way from the Gulf, U.S. bases in the Gulf countries to Jordan and Israel, which makes it harder to carry out attacks on Iran because it takes much longer and they have to refuel in the air. The public in the U.S. don't support this war, and people expect Iran to just be soft and rely on the promises of the U.S. when the U.S. has tried to trick Iran at every single angle, even during negotiations. Twice during negotiations, they attacked Iran. Trump would never give anything to Iran if he wasn't forced to. And Iran has been playing very soft for decades. And where did that lead it to? You have to think about, every time, what Trump understands is strength and weakness. When you show weakness, for Trump, he's going to try to take advantage of that. When you show strength, that's going to be putting him in his place. You know, when he attacked Iran, when he killed their general, Soleimani, which is, you know, highest IRGC commander, Iran didn't really do anything, and he saw that as weakness. The whole world saw that as weakness. When Israel killed some leaders in Iran, Palestinian leaders, Iran didn't do much about that. Even when the U.S. dropped the bombs of all bombs, the mother of all bombs on Iran to obliterate their nuclear facilities last year in June with Israel, Iran didn't really retaliate against the U.S. They just hit the Al-Udeid air base in Qatar, and they even told the Americans, hey, we're going to hit you over here. We don't want a war. And how did the Americans reward them for not retaliating? They carried out an attack and killed their leadership. Their supreme leader killed children in school. So Iran's strategy now is going to be very different to before. And you keep on hearing these reports that, oh, Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader, who's the son of the previous supreme leader, is dead. He's badly injured. Well, if you had any doubts before, that should have been cleared out right now, because yes, we haven't seen actual video recording of him, but almost immediately after the funeral of his father, which was last month, there was an extreme change of position in Iran, in which they started to become a lot more aggressive. They started to attack ships more consistently. They started to retaliate against U.S. assets around the region to push them away. And even when the U.S. stopped attacking Iran, Iran continued to remove the threats that they saw from the Americans. And when the U.S. threatened them we're going to blow up your, the plants and bridges, Iran gave a list of all the bridges and power plants that they're going to retaliate against in the Gulf areas if their assets are attacked. And now we have seen a reshuffle in the cabinet, in the government, where the new secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, which is the council that is in charge of defense and national security, one of the most important organizations in the Iranian government. The secretary has now become, which is Riza, has become also is a spokesman for Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader. So anything that Riza says is essentially, we conclude, coming from Mujtaba Khamenei. Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, said he had a six-hour conversation with Mujtaba to explain the economic situation. So the government officials are now saying they're having more contact. It seems like, yes, Mujtaba was badly injured, but he's recovering and he's gaining his strength and his focus. And so you're seeing a more unified, stance that the Iranians are having. Even, Arachi and everyone has been saying that, hey, we can get into an agreement with Oman about how to manage the Strait of Hormuz. That doesn't mean anything to do with opening the Strait of Hormuz. Opening the Strait of Hormuz requires these demands, and they've restated it time and time and time again. Give us the, unfreeze our assets, give us compensation for the damages that you've done, end the war, end the blockade, end the war not just in Iran, but in Yemen, in Lebanon. And now the only new thing that's different to the MOU is, before in the MOU they said end the wars in the region, but now they're specifically saying end the wars in Gaza, included as part of the other countries, Yemen, Lebanon, and Iran. That's the only new thing. Now Trump is he said, low-key it. I mean, the fact that this guy's in a wartime and he's just low-keying it just shows he's out of ideas and he's out of options, really. To escalate the war means complete destruction of the region, because the only thing that they can do more of, that they haven't done, is attack the infrastructure of Iran. Because they tried everything else. They killed their leadership. They apparently degraded their military. And yet Iran is still responding and retaliating with more force than before. So the only other path they could take is attack the infrastructure. And if the U.S. does that, then Iran is going to retaliate against the infrastructure of the Gulf countries. Now, one of the reasons why apparently the U.S. didn't carry out those attacks that Trump promised was going to happen, the most powerful attack since World War II, is what Trump said in his Truth Social before he canceled it, is that Iran called, obviously, and we know how truthful that is, but also the Gulf countries called. And there are reports that MBS the leader in Saudi Arabia, called and essentially said that we're not going to allow you to do that from our airspace and our air bases, because we understand that if you do that, Iran is going to destroy our infrastructure and it will be uninhabitable, essentially. If there's no power in Saudi Arabia during July, August, the hottest months of the year, no one's going to survive there. Everyone will leave, right? And he said that basically, this is based on reports that that the US, that Saudi Arabia is going to have to sell their U.S. treasuries, dump their U.S. treasuries to create money for the damages that Iran will inflict on Saudi Arabia if those attacks go ahead. And if the Saudi Arabia did that, which is one of the largest holders of U.S. treasuries, U.S. debt, then the interest rates on the U.S. debt would skyrocket because people will be dumping it. And that would essentially lead to the path of the U.S. being bankrupt unless they print a lot more money to save themselves. This is exactly what's going to happen with Japan. One of the reasons why the U.S. intervened in the yen, the Japanese yen, from crashing, is that Japan had to sell their dollars, which is invested in U.S. treasuries, to prop up the yen, which was really falling. And so they wanted to kind of ensure their currency isn't falling too much, because then inflation would skyrocket, because there'd be because Japan imports a lot of things. And if their currency is going down, then the cost of external products, such as oil, is going to skyrocket compared to the yen. And it's going to be very costly for the economy and destroy the economy. So what the Americans did was buy the U.S. treasuries from the Japanese by printing money. So they're actually printing their money in the U.S. and buying the U.S. treasuries from the Japanese. So the U.S. treasuries don't dump. That's how bad the situation is for the U.S. And you're going to see other countries kind of lead to that path where they have to sell their U.S. treasuries, their U.S. debt, to ensure that their currency isn't free falling, causing economic issues. The U.S. is in big trouble here, and Iran knows this and is taking advantage of this, because they have only one chance to really remove the sanctions and the economic pressure that the U.S. has applied on Iran for the past 47 years. This is their only chance, and they know if they don't get it now, they'll never get it. So they're playing their cards, essentially. And it's the U.S. who gave them those cards. That's the funny part. It's the U.S. who started this war and resulted in the situation. And this is why, for me, I believe this is going to be the worst U.S. foreign policy decision made by any president to attack Iran. This is worse than Vietnam. Yes, in Vietnam, a lot more people died, and it was a devastating situation for the U.S., but that Vietnam War didn't make Vietnam a regional power. This war, if this war didn't happen, Iran would have continued to be isolated, and the economic pressures would have increased really, really bad, and probably led to huge internal instability. Instead, because of this war, there's now more unity in Iran. There's more now support for the government. And Iran, the world is engaging more with Iran to ensure that their ships pass the Strait of Hormuz. And now it controls the Strait of Hormuz, which means it controls the production of oil to the world, because it can reduce the transits, increase the transits that pass through Hormuz, and therefore can wage economic warfare on any nation that is waging economic warfare on it, such as the US, such as the Europeans. That's the crazy thing. This is Trump's legacy. He's going to be remembered as the one that made Iran, that helped Iran become a regional power in West Asia and Middle East. If you did like this video, do hit the like and subscribe, and we will see you very soon.